Package manager, get rid of that. Okay, so this is a video to walk you guys through creating shares in Linux as root. And the reason you would want to do this is, say for example, you have a worker or a user and you want them to have information, but you don't want them to be able to change that information. So you can create text files or Word documents or whatever you want on that machine as root. And you have the permission to create and to change and modify anything inside that file or folder. And they will have permission to read it, but not be able to modify it. So they can't say, well, you didn't tell me that, because the list of directions they have is pretty straightforward, right? So one thing you have to figure out whenever you have to understand whenever you're going through and you're setting these is that there are 3 different columns for writes. So if you've ever seen this before, 777, 775, 755, the very first column is the owner. All right, so first column is the owner of the file. Right, so the very first, the 7, would be the owner. Typically that would be whoever is creating the file. You can change ownership. You can do something called chown and change ownership of the file to somebody else, but typically the person who created the file is the one that owns it. The second column is for the group that the owner of the file is a member of. Column is the group. The owner is okay. And then the third column is what's called a world. So that is basically everyone else who is not in the owner's group or the owner, right? All right, so the column to the left, the very far left, is 7, right? That is the owner. The middle column is the group, and the column to the far right is the world, right? So if I'm writing this out, this would be the owner, this would be the group, and then this would be the world, right? So there are 3 different things that you add up together to get those numbers. The first is a 4, and 4 equals read, right? Then we have 2 equals write, and then we have 1 that equals execute. Okay, so whenever you're looking at one of these, you see a command like this. You see chmod, help I spelled it right, chmod plus x, and then I name whatever the file is, file.sh. What I'm doing is I'm actually adding the execute to that file, which means I am adding execute to the last column on this file. But I can also write it out this way. I can also say the owner of this file is whoever. Like say if I'm logged in as myself, I could change it to 775. Now what 775 would mean that the owner can read, write, and execute anything in that file. The group can read, write, and execute anything in that file. I'll go ahead and write that out. And then the world, right, if it's 775, can what? They can read and write, but they cannot execute. So if it is, say for example, a shell script, they can't execute the shell script. They can modify the shell script, but they can't run the shell script, right? So if I'm wanting to create a file that is read-only for everyone but me, then I would typically create a file that is 744 or 774, depending on who all is in my group, right? So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to close this out. I don't want to save it. I'm going to open up a terminal. So here I am. If you ever wonder who you're logged in as, you just type in who, right? It'll tell you who's logged into the machine. PWDs, print working directory, shows the directory that I'm in. I'm in home John, right? And I'm going to create a file. And to create a file, keep in mind I didn't say folder, I said file. I'm going to use the command touch. Now I'm going to call this test.txt, right? So now I have created this folder. There's file. There's nothing in it. So I can hit ls, and I see all of my folders that are there, and I see my test.txt. If I want to see who owns that file, you can see here my permissions are, right? So read write, read, and then read, right? John is the owner, and it's in the group John, right? And test.txt has 0 bytes in it, okay? So if I want to do the exact same thing, but I want to do that as root, I can switch user. And give me a second, I'm not really sure what the password is for this. That was it. So I type in who again, right? Of course I'm root, but I'm logged in as John. PWD, same print working directory is what it means. It basically just tells you where you are in the hierarchy of the file system. I'm in home John, right? I can hit ls. I can see my file is there. I can also hit ls-la, and I've got all the files and folders like I had before, right? So I am root now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create another file, touch, and I'm going to name it test2.txt. Right, so now I have that file, and I have the first one I created as John. I have the second one I created as root. So I'm going to do a long listing. That's a list, and then long and all. And now you see that on test2.text, the user is root and the group is root, right? So if you were to look at this in a number format, this would show up as 7, or sorry, this would show up as 6, 4, 4, right? So that not everybody can read and write, execute this, but they can read, write, and then anybody who's in the group root can read, and then in the world can read, right? So I'm going to put some information in this. So one of the ways I like to do that is using a text editor called Nano. And then tab complete. Now I have Nano, and I have my text file opened. Is just a test of the file creating permissions, right? So Control X to exit out, and I'm going to say yes, I want to save it, and it's going to write that file there, right? So if I just want to print out on the screen what I have in that file, I can just type in the word cat, and then test2 tab complete, and then it will print out. This is just a test of the file creating permissions, right? Cat is short for concatenate, so you're concatenating what is actually in that file. So now I'm going to exit out, and now I'm back as John, right? I want to go ahead and clear this out. So as John, I can go in and I can type in ls-la or -la, and you can see my folder, my file is still there. I have the one that I created, then I have the one that I created as root, right? So root owns this. It means the root is the owner, and then the group root, right? So I cannot change this as John, right? So I can try that. I can try test2, and I can go in and change this to whatever I want, right? So, and you can see this at the bottom of the terminal here. It says file test2.txt is unwritable, so I can't change anything to it because I'm not the owner of it, but I can read it, right? So how important would this be if you were wanting to give someone information but you didn't want them to be able to modify it? So, say for example, I give you guys test information, and I say this is what you have to do in the test, and I put it in a read-only text file on your computer. Well, if you didn't want to follow all the directions, and you could go back and change those directions to suit whatever your needs were, then you could show me, well, this is what you wrote. Well, no, it's not, because you're not root, I am, and I didn't make those changes, and you can't either. So I'm gonna try to make some changes here. I don't feel like working today. right? So exclamation, I feel like working today. So I Control X like I did before. I want to answer yes to name to write test2.txt. Remember, this is the file that's written by root. And error, permission denied. Well, why is permission denied? Because I'm trying to edit a file I don't own, right? So I can Control X, hit no, and then I can go back and cat that file again. And this is just a test of the file creating permissions. That's what I wrote as root. So if you are doing this in a terminal, you can do it in a matter of seconds. It's really not that big of a deal. So I can also let me go back as root. CSU, switch user, put in root's password. I can also create a folder, right? So I'm gonna make dir, right? This is make a directory. This is how we create folders inside Linux or Unix-based systems. Same thing works in Mac OS as well. So I'm gonna make a directory, and I'm gonna call it work for you, right? Work for you. And I have ls again. I have test2.txt. I'm going to move test2 to the work. Case sensitive now. Work for you. I'm going to move that to the work for you directory. So now I can ls again. It's no longer there. I see my work for you directory is there. I can hit ls-la, and I see work for you is owned by root and as the owner, the user, and the group is root, right? So if I'm creating a folder on a user's desktop, and I have a bunch of stuff put in that folder that I want them to be able to see, be able to read, but not be able to modify, I can do it this way. So now I'm going to cd into that folder, change directory, right? ls, and there's my folder. I can cat test, and there's my folder and my file, just like normal. So I can go back in, and I can make changes to this myself. Right? So just like that. And I Control X, yes, I can change that because I actually own it. Now the reverse of that is also true. If John owns a file, right, and root opens it up, root has control over pretty much everything on a computer. Root can make changes to pretty much anything he wants. He can take ownership of the file, change ownership to whoever, and I could do the same thing here. I mean, I could change ownership of that file to John if I wanted to. I could change the permissions on the file. I could change it to 777 where everybody can modify it. So if I was going to do that, I would go chmod and then just type in 777 and then test2.txt, and now everybody in the world has read, write, and execute permissions over that text file. So if you to verify that, I type in ls-la, which gives me a listing of files and folders in that structure, and then it also gives me all, which means ls-la is a long list, all, which means it gives me everything, even hidden files. So now you see all those permissions have changed, right? So if you look at the very top up here where test2 was, let's scroll back up a little bit. We had RW read write, we had read, and then we had read. Owner was root, right? Group root. Well, now we've modified it, right? So root owns it, so root can modify it. I have modified it so that everyone in the world can read, write, and execute this file. So it makes it kind of useless to have it, other than people using it for information purposes. That's all I've got for this one, guys. Any more of these you want, just write them down on the instructor assistance sheet, and I will make a walkthrough for you. Thank you.